Hello and welcome to Claret and Blue, a bonus episode this week for you. We're going to do a Q&A. Now, not as long as our traditional Monday show episodes where we do an hour or so. Probably going to do about half that this afternoon. John, we've got 10 questions from social media sent to us. First off, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. Yeah, doing well. Back in the office, which is nice. We'll be in the office more often now using this space, so that's good. Yeah, doing well, thanks, Dan.
Yeah, all good. Looks slightly different than it did when me and Matt was in here. We've changed the angle slightly. We've got a shirt on the wall now. We've got a little flag in the background. It's all still trial and error, but we're trying our best to make this a space that we can actually use. I've put a big blanket up behind me to stop some of this green screen reflection. I had a few comments saying, like, just use the green wall as a green screen. And I might put a clip in here, actually, of why that's a bad idea, because it will look terrible. Q&A time, though. The first one is from Brent. He says, realistically, how much money, if any, do Villa have to spend in this window? Okay. So that's a loaded question, isn't it? Yeah, straight in there.
I mean, obviously, firstly, we don't have a specific number. Only Villa's chiefs, Monchi, and I suppose Emery might know, and Suarez will know that exact figure. And by the way, that can obviously change as well. There isn't one kind of bag of money that's set aside. It's
bag of coins.
Yeah, bag of coins. It's an opportunity. January. That's the purpose of the window. It's if you feel the need to bring in a player, but then you've got to weigh that up with, well, if it's a player that's going to improve our team, you're going to be overpaying for that player, because what player comes to Villa and improves it that isn't playing for a top team? That isn't a top player in that team. So it's all about opportunity. And we saw, obviously Alex Moreno last January comes in for £13 million, which is a great deal because it's a player who obviously is now 30, but a player that was allowed to leave Real Betis. So that was a good opportunity, and that's obviously someone that Emery's tracked for a while. And he wasn't the only left back on our list, so we obviously wanted one, so we were going to sign one, but then it was which one would become available. Luckily, Alex Moreno was that player. If we're looking at, for example, Jhon Duran being replaced, which was something that I think was probably more so, likely to happen in the start of the window, because we were, tracking strikers, and could one come in? Maybe not. And at the moment, that hasn't kind of happened, and I'd probably put my neck on the line and saying that probably won't happen now for the rest of the window. And Emery said that himself, that it's going to be himself and Jhon Duran and Ollie Watkins, and it's all about opportunity, as I say. Yes, Villa have some money to spend, but that doesn't mean that they have to spend it in this window, as I say, because players are overpriced. And why would a team let a player leave in the first place in January? That would ring alarm bells for me. For example, if we were to sell one of our best players, it'd be for a mega fee. And if we were willing to sell a player, i.e. Traore and Callum Chambers, there's a reason for that. It's because they're not good enough to play for Aston Villa. Yeah. With all due respect, and they'll have a career elsewhere. So
you can. We spoke about January deals a little bit, and some of the YouTube comments from the last time we spoke about this were, well, there are good deals to be had in January sometimes. Obviously, Moreno is a good example. Yeah. Bruno Fernandes joined Man United in January, apparently. There's a few others that people in the comments threw our way. But you could also find a hell of a lot of players that don't work in January as well. So,
and the best deals that we've done in January have come before football boomed. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Darren Benson stuff, who was that 20 million?
Something like that.
A striker that scores 20 goals in the Premier League isn't costing 20 million anymore. It's 100 million pretty much, right? Yeah. That's an Ollie Watkins type of player. So that player is, you know what I mean? It's especially with the PSL regulations nowadays, the top six, or the big six clubs with their massive revenues, they kind of avoided that, and they got a massive head start for years. And now clubs like ourselves, Newcastle, we have to be kind of wary of what we spend. And yes, 150 million of pure profit in the last few years is fantastic, but we don't have to sell anyone to make or to balance.
Yeah.
But we need to just be careful, and the summer window is when Villa will do the bulk of their business for sure.
Mm-hmm. Right, let's move away from the transfer window. Steve asks, is there any update on the fitness of Jacob Ramsey? Frustrating one, isn't it, Ramsey?
Yeah. So far, no. I have asked the question, but no, nothing back yet. And hopefully that's something that will come in the next couple of days. Emery said that he's going to have a scan either on... when did we play Everton? Sunday. It was either the Sunday or the Monday, he said. So, he says he's hopeful that it's not a big injury, but he felt a pain in his hamstring. So that, I'm not going to speculate, but that could be weeks. It could be month. I don't know. Could be longer. Who knows? Depends on the scan, but they didn't want to risk him against Everton. That's something, in terms of the news that will come out hopefully in the next few days. If not, the next time that Emery will talk to the media will be, I believe, probably next Thursday, to be confirmed. But yeah.
Yeah, okay. So a wait and see on Jacob Ramsey. We all want to see him back fit and playing, of course, but just a really frustrating one that kind of just gets back in the side, and then something else feels a pain, got to have a scan. Hopefully it's just a phantom pain or something, and it's not really anything too serious, and the scan goes, yeah, it's all fine and he's back, but it's probably unlikely, I would say. Joey asks, is it possible to see more of Watkins and Duran as a combo up top, or do you think Emery will go with McGinn or Tielemans in the spot next to Watkins if Moussa Diaby is not playing?
I wouldn't, and I don't think Emery would start both of them, from the off, because of the control that he wants Villa to have in games, and that means having, it doesn't always mean having four, midfielders on the pitch, but having McGinn, Tielemans, when Ramsey's fit, Luis Kamara, those players, they can control a game and dictate the tempo of it, and they can progress the ball. Whereas a Duran is obviously going to play off the shoulder. He's going to play with Watkins, maybe, or they'll cross paths. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think that's something that we'll be seeing. To be honest with you, kind of straight up, it's certainly something that I'd like to see off the bench, because Duran does make an impact. We saw that against Palace. We saw it against Burnley when he won the penalty. We saw it against Everton. Could have easily won the game. And I was saying to the reporter that I was with, on another day, we're coming back from that Everton game saying, "Oh, Jhon Duran is the guy. He's the one that's won us the game." And there's no way that we should be letting him go and stuff like that. And that's something that I believe in anyway, because I think he's a very good player, and when he comes off the bench, he's got a lot to his game. He's quick. He's powerful. He causes problems. I think he gets kind of caught up sometimes too much in the emotion of the game. I think a few times against Everton, and obviously in previous games as well, we'd either square up to someone or we'd put someone to the floor. I think he's got the most fouls per 90 this season, or something along that line.
What a stat that is.
Yeah, he's also got the most shots per 90 as well. So
fair enough.
He comes on the pitch and Captain Chaos, I think someone called him on Twitter the other week. So I think that probably sums him up best. But I really like him. Certainly a player that we should be keeping hold of. But playing with Watkins from the off, I think that probably disrupts what Emery's trying to build in terms of the structure that he always goes on about. Yeah,
and just as a kind of an aside on Duran, I suppose the interview that was doing the rounds the other day on social media for was it in Colombia?
Yeah.
So the reporter, obviously speaking Spanish, is it? I should know this stuff, man. In Colombia, speaking Spanish, I think, asking him about Chelsea and AC Milan, and the headline was something like Jhon Duran interested in AC Milan or whatever it would be. That was, from our understanding, and I saw a great thread from Luis Miguel Echegaray, who broke it down, obviously speaks Spanish natively, and kind of translated it, I guess, if you want to say that. And it was basically that the reporter was kept going, looking for a headline almost. Striker speaks out on Chelsea, making him almost say something that he probably shouldn't as a 20-year-old. That wasn't Jhon Duran going, I want to leave Aston Villa, I want to go to AC Milan. It was, I'm being respectful and answering your question to leave me alone, basically.
Yeah, I was just writing a quick piece on that, explaining actually what was said and how it happened coming here on the train, because I think sometimes when quotes come out, people lose context of, was he asked about it? He didn't ask, oh, how's your day, Jhon Duran? And then he says, I want to go to, I love Chelsea. He didn't say that to be fair. I dream of playing for Chelsea. He didn't say that. What he said was, he was answering, 3, maybe 4 questions about Chelsea and AC Milan, because this guy obviously wanted that headline, which, from a journalist point of view, I understand. But I think it's different when, you've got a 20-year-old standing in front of you who isn't kind of media trained and doesn't know yet, exactly how to
close down a question.
To be honest, I think he was okay. He's just being honest. He said Chelsea are a big club and AC Milan are a big club. Yep, that's correct.
Doesn't mean he wants to leave. Yeah,
he did not say that Villa weren't, or he didn't say that he doesn't want to play for Villa. What he said was he wants to play in the Champions League with Villa. He wants to help the club stay at the top of the table, and he wants to progress. He did admit that adapting in England's been difficult. Which again is understandable. This guy
that's fine.
He grew up in Colombia, played in America for a bit. He's 20 years old. He's adapting to a completely different culture. The weather's crap. He probably doesn't have much to do. Let's be honest. He goes to training and he wants to be playing more football. Yes, I would first to say that I think he needs to kind of knuckle down, focus on his football and his development, because he's working under one of the best coaches in European football, in Unai Emery, playing for a team that are third in the Premier League in Europe, going for Champions League. It's a perfect opportunity for him. But yeah, to be asked questions about Chelsea and AC Milan, he's not gonna, he kind of ignored it in the first part by saying I'm not interested, which is fine. The second part, he said something similar again, and then the third part, he's obviously said something along the lines of, yeah, they're a big club, and if they're interested, then you're doing something right. How else is he supposed to answer that?
Because it's a non-story for me.
If he doesn't answer that, he then gets asked it a fourth and fifth times. You need to understand that this is a journalist who just wants the headline, and wanted him to say what he said, and probably more, to be honest. So, it's all a lot of fluff, really. It's nothing to...
Definitely. Let's move on from that. The next question is from Wade, who says, I'm curious if John knows why it appears Mings and Buendia have taken two entirely different recovery paths from their ACL surgery. Mings goes off to the USA, he's been away from Villa more, and Emery Buendia appears to stay in the UK and has been seen around the team more. Is there any info on that, or is it just speculation from our part? Because I would just say that personal preference is maybe one. Mings wants to get away from it, wants to get away from the spotlight. Different specialists, maybe whoever Tyrone Mings wanted to see was in America, and whoever Buendia saw wasn't. Things like that.
Yeah, and I think as well, going back to, we've mentioned it before, obviously the struggle that Mings went through when he first has his ACL problems playing for Bournemouth. A change of scene probably helps him to get away from different things. That can help you mentally and go away to a different, even just a different environment sometimes, a different climate and a different way of recovering from an injury. And Emery Buendia, I don't know, maybe he wanted to stay with his family.
He wants to be around the team, maybe that helps
possibly
him think,
so,
if I'm still around the place, I'll feel more involved.
And I think their injuries were somewhat different anyway, because I believe Mings had, I guess we could say, a worse injury. He obviously had different surgeries and stuff. So, I don't think there's anything, not a kind of a specific answer from me on that, but I think it's probably one of those where Mings probably wanted to go to America for different reasons. Exactly, I don't know why. But yeah, Buendia stayed around the team and has been at Bodymore. Mings has been at Bodymore quite a lot as well.
Yeah.
But Buendia seems to have kind of stayed as if he's...
But if you did,
he wants to be around.
I think if you didn't know what they'd gone through, I'd think Buendia's probably only out for 5 or 6 weeks and he's still at Bodymore because he's coming back soon, whereas... they're not. Buendia's going to be out for a long time as well. They could very easily have just both disappeared into the darkness, and we don't hear from either of them. But
and
just preference.
Whether Buendia recovers quicker than Mings and can maybe play a part towards the end of the season, we'll wait and see. But it's not something that that might be his focus to get maybe an appearance in the Conference League and whatever, and whatever it may be. I'm not too sure, but. There's no risk that's going to be taken with these injuries. They know that from the start of next season, that's going to be their kind of goal, their mission to be ready for. So.
Yeah, definitely. Alberto Solano asks, is there any truth in Villa signing the Serbian right back, who I believe is Kosta Nedeljkovic?
I think you've done quite well there, to be fair.
Thank you, mate. Hopefully.
Costa, yeah. You should be... signing on soon.
We don't know when this video is going out. If it's one is soon, it could already be done. Yeah,
and he's expected to go back to Red Star Belgrade for the second half of the season, and whether he plays for Villa next season again, we'll wait and see. That completely depends on his development. I wouldn't be surprised to see him go out on loan again to maybe a different club, because he's only 18 at the moment, obviously. So a player that. Obviously, I've
never seen him, never heard of him.
I would have watched him without knowing it when Man City played against Red Star away from home. But a player that, speaking to a few, it sounds like I've spoken to a lot of people in Serbia. I've spoken to one person, Serbia Footy Scout or something on Twitter. I sent him some questions and had a chat with him about him, and he says that he's very athletic, he's powerful. A kind of a traditional fullback. He's not. He said that at least at the moment, he's not a player that he can. See kind of playing in that inverted role that a lot of fullbacks do these days, which is okay, because if we're basing it off Emery's system, then a traditional right back is what he is playing with currently, and I know a lot can change from now till the next 3 years potentially, because a lot has changed in his tactical structure from just the last few months. But Costa is clearly a player that is very exciting. It's obviously a cheap fee. And the chap that I spoke to as well seems to think that he's got a good chance of making the Serbian squad for the Euros, which I thought was interesting. He has actually made an international, a senior international appearance for his country, but Serbia have got England in their group in the Euros, and he says that there's not too much competition, so he could quite easily make that squad. So yeah, it could be an opportunity to watch him in the flesh there. But no, a player who he says has got to improve in his final product, but what you're looking at right now is a player who's very athletic for 18, he's very physical, he's very quick, he's very intelligent very intelligent, sorry, as well, he says. And then I asked him, can you compare it to anyone? And he said his profile would probably be something like Denzel Dumfries. Not, obviously, his attacking output isn't that good yet because, say, he's 18 and he hasn't played outside of the Serbian Super League, I think it's called. So clearly a lot of development needs to take place before Villa can, really start to look at him as an option. But a player that clearly has quite a high ceiling and is very exciting. And yeah, a player that Villa have obviously tracked for a long time as well.
I like that we'll just call him Costa from now on. It's much easier for everybody at the moment. Obviously, I've seen a few people saying things about, like, why are we loaning him back? And obviously, as we're filming this, we can't say for certain that that's what will happen, but we think it's pretty likely to be that. We need a right back now, get him in the squad, start integrating him, that kind of thing. For me, again, I don't know anything about him. I like the idea of the deal to buy somebody for cheap, a young player with potential, and keep them where they are at the moment. Maybe in the summer they go out somewhere else, like you say, and we don't see him play for Villa for 2 years. To me, that's very like, well, if Brighton were doing it, I'd go, that looks good. If they think that's a good idea, I wish we did stuff like that, rather than sign this guy 5 years down the line for 50 million from when he's already in the Premier League. Get him now, get in early and start the process here.
Yeah, it's almost like someone asked about this actually in my Q&A that I do on Birmingham Live every Wednesday morning if you want to ask a question.
Clang.
In the comment section. Good plug. They asked about the recruitment because, what is the plan in terms of profile of player? And my answer was, well, Villa have gone from in, 2019 when they were promoted to buying players like Luiz, Konsa, obviously a bit later on, but Watkins, Cash, players that are good enough to play in the Premier League, but have got a lot of room for growth, and players that are now worth triple the value. Luiz we buy for 15, Konsa was 12.5, I think. So we've now moved on to a point where we are so good that we can now buy Diaby, we can buy Pau Torres, we can buy players who are not necessarily in the prime, but their market value is pretty much as high as it will get, I think, there or thereabouts, because we're that good and we're ready to buy those players now to improve right now. We don't have to buy, name a championship player. For example, Jonathan Rowe is a very good player, but would he start for Villa? No, but maybe a couple of years before we would buy him and he would start. But because we're so much better now, we can afford to buy younger players, and this player is obviously kind of come from nowhere and he's 18. He's much more inexperienced than even a championship player. He's never played out of Serbia, as I say. But you look at someone like a Jhon Duran, for example, similar in a way to Costa because he's played in a league which isn't particularly competitive, but it's clearly got a massive ceiling and is only a teenager. So those are two similar transfers. Obviously, Jhon Duran's could be 19 million, I think, overall. So that is quite a big outlay for a youngster, whereas Costa is much cheaper. But I like that we're looking in one kind of market of here's a group of players who can improve us right now. For example, in the summer, I don't doubt that we'll probably look at a right back. And that will be a player that can improve us right now, whereas Costa is a player that will improve us in 4 or 5 years. And again, because of PSR and stuff, we're buying a player that's so cheap, it's almost hardly going to have a dent on FFP. So I think it's very smart to kind of go from here's the guys for the future and here's the guys for now. Yeah,
it's a very joined up thinking plan, isn't it? Towards
that right back that I think we should be signing in the summer kind of has 3 years at Villa, then you've got Costa coming through, and that's how it should work, and that's how the big clubs do it. So.
And if you're signing him for 8 or 9 million and he has a spell out on loan in Europe, a spell out on loan in the Championship, and 20 appearances for Villa, you're probably going to not lose out financially if you have to sell him in 3 seasons
even if
as well.
He doesn't fulfil his potential, which is very high. Exactly that.
You might sell him for 12 or 13 million, and that's fine. Let's move on then. We've got a few questions left. Holt End Horizon asks, is Newcastle United now a must-win with Spurs breathing down our necks and 5th place potentially not being a Champions League spot this year? Still don't think the 5th place thing's going to be cleared up yet, is it?
No, 5th place won't be clear until the end of the season.
Yeah, it's still a long way to go yet for us to find out. Like, if we go far in Europe, Liverpool, Brighton, West Ham, Man City could win the Champions League. 5th place, we'll get it.
Yeah, and that's why I'm kind of hanging my hat on it and thinking not top 4 but top 5. Maybe that's a bit.
I still think we'll finish top 4. But yes, you are right. Yeah. Is it a must-win, Newcastle?
No, it's not a must-win because if we draw the game, is the season over? No, so it's not a must-win.
Well, if we lose, it's not over either.
Exactly. I don't like the phrase must-win. If I'm totally honest, because of course it's not a must-win.
Is that your joint top?
Yeah, I understand pretty much. I understand the the kind of emphasis on it's an important game, of course it is. Man United and Newcastle United at home, if we can win both of those games, honestly, the distance we have then from not necessarily sixth because West Ham are there right now, but in terms of those two teams, it's a massive gap, and that gap shouldn't be, made up. Especially if we could beat Newcastle. United, obviously, they are closer, but as I say, if we can beat them at home, then okay, happy days. In terms of the fifth place stuff, again, I look at Tottenham and I think that is definitely a team that can. I've said it before, I do think they'll finish in the top 5, Tottenham. And that isn't anything against us. I just think the second half of the season is going to be very difficult because of the amount of games we're going to play, especially if we play in the Conference League, go into the final and whatnot. I just think...
What do you think the top 5 will be in order?
City will win the league, I think. And then, I don't know, Liverpool, Arsenal, Tottenham and Villa.
Okay, Villa 5th.
And again, it's not me being critical of Villa. I just think it's going to be a very difficult second half of the season. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. We can finish above Tottenham. We could maybe finish above Arsenal. I don't know, but I just think sitting here right now, we're going to have to find a new way of playing because teams are respecting us more. We're going to have a lot more games, and we've seen what 1 or maybe 2 injuries can do to the first 11, and how that can hinder us. So, it's been a fantastic season up till now, and I expect us to finish in the top 5, and top 5 should hopefully get Champions League football. So, don't want to be negative with it. I think that's still been positive, but
Champions League is the aim, isn't it? And if 5th gets it, and we finish 5th, that's fine.
Yeah,
that's more than fine.
I know people say we're in a title race and stuff, and we're not out of it till we're not, if that makes sense. But I've said before, my first place is, as long as it gets Champions League football, is 5th because that's it. You know what I mean? That's this 4th or 5th doesn't matter. It's as long as it gets it.
Yeah. Question from Adam, who says, with the amount of data that players are expected to take on board, for example, multiple set pieces, nuanced tactical changes, could the dip in form for Villa over the last few games point to a bit of mental burnout? Which is something that probably isn't talked about very often, and we always just think physical fitness, but mental as well.
Potentially. I thought the question was going to be like an overload of information maybe, which I don't think would be the case because we've seen how well Villa have done over the last, 14 months under Emery. But burnout, I mean, possibly, and I think that's why this break's so important. I said after the game against Man City that I didn't expect us to go again against Arsenal and win the game because mentally I thought we were in such a kind of, high place after that Man City win. That Arsenal were going to be so much more difficult, and I think that showed, to be fair, in the last... after we scored, really, we kind of, physically looked kind of done, which, again, is okay because we've been really, really busy in the fixture schedule, but also mentally, I think we were kind of just going through the motions, and in the end, we won the game, fantastic. But then, since then, I think, maybe I would point more to teams respecting us more, if I'm totally honest, and I think that has an effect because... all of a sudden some things that we were doing at the start of the season don't quite come off, and then what happens then? How do you recover and kind of go again with that? And that's up to Emery, and again I totally believe that he'll be able to kind of come up with different ways of winning, and that's the challenge in the second half of the season. I think mentally we'll be okay because we know that we're going for something, and I think there'll be less pressure on us because there'll be other teams who are expected to finish above us and stuff like that. Even though we've had such a good start to the season, the media won't be talking about us as much, for example. It will just be an internal thing of we've been so good, we have to stay in the top 5 now, and that will be the pressure that we have inside. But we saw last season how well we coped with that after losing to United and Wolves, but then we go again against Liverpool, Brighton, Tottenham. So hopefully that won't be an issue. Yeah.
There's 2 here from Matthias, who says, I'll do them in the same go. Do you think we're changing our tactics next season to a 3-4-3? And also wants to ask about the Emile Smith-Rowe links. He says he's barely played in 2 years, and I can't see how that would be a good transfer for us. Do you want to start with formation?
Yeah, I don't know, because I wouldn't. No one expected us to go to. Actually, I don't know if no one would expect what we're doing this season, but I didn't expect us to be playing in this particular way in terms of controlling games in the opposition half and. Playing as we are so high, especially without Mings. I think that was certainly something that we all thought would now be scrapped. But I think I said previously, it's almost like nothing has changed in that regard. So I wouldn't know. how we're going to play next season. Again, it depends on who comes into the club. We've seen the changes that Emery's brought in. For example, Torres, Tielemans as well comes in, and we're all questioning kind of where's he going to play, who's he going to displace, because he's not going to play on Smith Rowe, which I think was the other question.
Yeah.
That's not something I've firmed up myself. I don't know whether that's a report that's just linking in because of Emery, and obviously Villa had an interest in him, 2 or 3 years ago now.
Smith's still here then?
Mm-hmm.
Was it Dean Smith still in charge then when we were first linked with...
Yeah, it was Jack Grealish left.
Yeah.
So, again, I haven't firmed that one up, but not a player I don't think that would dramatically change us.
No, I don't think a player that massively improves us. I think if I was just speaking as a fan and thought, if I saw that come on Sky Sports News, would I be happy with it? My initial reaction would be a bit underwhelming. Like Matthias says, hasn't played a massive amount over the last season and a half or so. But Emery gave him his debut. If he sees a player there, if Emery and Monchi and the team at Villa think he's somebody that can improve us, my mindset totally changes to just go, if they think he's the right player, I'm on board with that. I don't know whether that makes me too fickle or narrow-minded or whatever, but my initial reaction as a fan would be, I'm not sure. But then I'll just think, well, if Emery wants him, he must see something.
Yeah. Whether he does on Smith Rowe, though, I'm not sure.
No, okay, right. Final question is from another Steve who says, do you play Longley versus Chelsea to give more recovery time for Torres?
Ooh, good question.
Yeah, great question. If he's fit and ready,
I
plays,
would.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, I would play Longley. Yeah, I think unless Torres is fully fit and there's no sign of any issues, any bruising or anything like that, then potentially he could play in the second half. Maybe, I don't know, but I would probably play Longley. Yeah, I've been impressed with Longley. I think
he's good against Everton.
Sheffield United game was if you ignore Leggy because that was an experience and a learning curve, but. Sheffield United, he didn't play his best game, but he was ill, as Emery said after the game, and that's why he came off for Torres. And then Torres aggravated his ankle, so that was a bit of a, it was a big frustration, wasn't it? Because now we've missed Torres for another few games. But I've been impressed with Longley, done well. Won all of his duels against Everton, against what is a physical team, 84% pass completion, had lots of different moments in the game that I was impressed with. So, happy with him. I think it's, to be honest, the best backup we could get for... a lone player or a player that is basically costing us nothing apart from, obviously a good wage. But no, done very well. And against Chelsea, if he plays, then I don't think he'll be out of place at all. Would
your answer be different if Chelsea was a league game? Are you happy with Longley playing because it's an FA Cup game?
You got me. Yeah, it would, to be fair. It would be different. And again, I'm not putting down the FA Cup, I don't think, but we've seen that Emery wants to rotate his players in cup competitions, and therefore Longley would play ahead of Torres anyway, I think. So that's why I want him to play in that game, and then hopefully Torres can play against Newcastle. And again, I don't think there's an issue with that. You need these players to be playing in some games, else they won't be ready to come in when they are needed. For example, Longley has been needed in the last few weeks, but if he didn't play in the Conference League, he'd be coming into it completely, we're playing that high line, aren't we? We're playing in a way that is very risky in some elements, but if they know what they're doing and they've had experiences of it already, then it's far less risky, I suppose. Longley plays against Chelsea for me, and then Torres for Newcastle, hopefully, if he's fit.
Okay, good stuff. That's all the questions, John. Thank you very much for doing your best to answer all of those. Thank you on social media for those that have submitted questions. We greatly appreciate it. We're filming something else today in the office with virtual reality, which will be coming out in the next couple of days or so. So keep your eyes peeled for that. It should be good fun. John, thanks for joining me. Thanks everyone at home for watching or listening, and we'll see you very soon.